Go ahead and call me a coward, say that I'm not strong because I'm not like you. Go ahead and call me crazy cause I live in a maze, tell me how about you? I think I live in my head, sometimes I think that I'm dead, I hide behind my youth. No, I've been losing my mind and I'm a little behind, step aside my shoes. Cause I never been happy with myself and I don't need no one feeling bad for me. Trying to offer me pity and throw jabs at me. Wanna give me advice and then laugh at me behind closed doors. Just close the door and let me be by myself, just me and myself. I'm tired of living, I cry, I hear it's easy to die, I wanna see for myself. And I know that sounds crazy to everyone else, but I'm depressed as fuck, stressed as fuck. Ain't no medicine that can cure what's intense as drugs. I need extra love and that ain't even enough. So that ain't even enough, and where the fuck is God? Damn, maybe I ain't believing enough, but today we gonna see if he's real. And if he is, then I guess I'm probably going to hell. Look, I ain't wanna die like this, I ain't picture my life like this. They don't know what it's like this. Pretending I'm happy so I can smile like this and laugh like you. Sometimes I wonder if I ever act like you. Could I finally fit in and maybe relax like, ooh? Or would you feel lost without me? Cause honestly, I think the world is better off without me and my mind spinning. This is the line finish. Truth is I don't care how they feel about my feelings. I made up my mind. I'm going out like Robin Williams. I guess I'm not the ordinary people of John Legend. And I've been suicidal since the day I was 9. Shit. Okay, the day I was 9, I've been tired of being bullied, couldn't stay out the fire. Grandma told me I should take it one day at a time, and damn it, look at me now. Fuck. Pen running out. Shit. Damn. Look, just know it's a new day, but if you're reading this, then it's probably too late. Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. What you wanted, I hope you finally happy. It's too late for you. Been going out of my mind. You don't know how many times that I done prayed for you. I hope you hear me, goddammit, cause I got so much shit that I wanna say to you. I used to shine, now I'm all in the dark. I remember I used to tell you to follow your heart, but goddammit, look at you now, it's all in your fault. How could you? Maybe it's my fault. I should've paid more attention to what you been doing. Maybe I should've been more of an influence. I can't believe that you're dead. I read your letter and all I could do is have mixed feelings about it. But I'll forever be attached to you. Damn. Part of me feels bad for you. A part of me feel like you weak and I'm mad at you. And I don't mean to be insensitive, but I don't understand how we couldn't prevent this shit. You took the easy way out. God damn it, you did. I mean, look what you did. I'm so fucking upset. How could you be so selfish? Nigga, how could you be so selfish? Now you're gone, you done left me so helpless. I wonder what God thinks. I hope you in God's place, behaving yourself. Yo, what the fuck you gotta say for yourself? Look, I really feel lost without you. I hate the fact you think the world is better off without you. And my mind's spinning, this is the line finish. Truth is I don't care how you feel about my feelings. And I'd be lying to you if I told you I'm fine. Listen, I know that you can hear me, all I need is like 5 minutes. I just wanna reach inside the casket and pull you out. I'm sorry, this is something that we both couldn't figure out. I wish I could hear you now. Is your soul missing? I wonder if you could do it again, would you do it different? Tell me what death is like. Was it meant for you, Brody? Did the heavens support it? Are you fucking happy now? Did you get what you wanted? Isn't this what you wanted? I feel the temperature falling and you've been suicidal back then, you were not. Yeah, even back then you was not. We was living on the edge, couldn't stay out the fire. Grandma told us we should take it one day at a time, and damn it, look at you now. Shit. But it's a new day, and if you can't hear me, then it's probably too late. Fuck! Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. Sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. Just make sure you tell my family it's okay. I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me. I don't wanna live to see another day. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I'm sorry, so much waiting on me.
Together, baby. We found love, we found us, we found love, yeah. We need trust, we're giving up, babe. We found love, we found us, we found us. We need trust, we're giving up. If forever was forever, babe, we would be together, baby. If forever was forever, baby, we would be together. If forever was forever, baby, yeah. Together, 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 forever, forever, yeah. We'll reach for the stars, take it that far. Oh, baby, come back home, baby.
No individual having the opportunity to have a better life for themselves or for their children, if they have the chance to scale a wall, to swim across a river, they're gonna take it.
And the sad thing is, most Americans don't know what freedom really is.
We will move forward to pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship.
They are laying waste to the very American Republic that has been the greatest country in the history of the world.
I did agree with some of the things that Donald Trump did, right? Because I do believe that there should be a vetting process.
Is that unreasonable to ask? Make sure you're not affiliated with any gangs. Why would we want you here? Get out.
The majority of the crimes that I prosecute as the chief law enforcement officer in Suffolk County are citizens of this country.
We grow enough here, we don't need to import more. If I could deport them, I would.
USA, USA, USA.
Life is so hard in Haiti or in the country that they had before, they'll take the risk of getting caught.
If you have $5,000, $10,000 to pay a coyote to bring you illegally across the border, pay to apply and come here legally.
She always said that, like, my situation is different, that I don't have the same opportunities as everyone else.
I'm not going to tell you about their life walk. I'm not going to tell you about how they got here. I'm not going to tell you about the journey they're experiencing. No, that doesn't matter. Them, they.
Sooner or later, I started to get brought into like meetings with lawyers.
On day one, we end a border policy which allows federal agents to snatch babies from the arms of their mothers.
That's when I realized, like, I'm an outcast.
Where is my protection? Where is my family's protection?
I need to know who you are, because if I sneak into Mexico and I commit a crime, there's no documentation of me being in Mexico.
We come from, maybe different backgrounds, but we share similar experiences.
I am you.
I am you.
In the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Brockton is proud to be the city of champions. With a rich sports history, Brockton is the hometown of boxing greats Rocky Marciano and marvelous Marvin Hagler. The city's athletic legacy continues with the success of Brockton High School sports teams. Known for athletic excellence and good sportsmanship, the BHS athletic program was selected as the #1 athletic program in Massachusetts by Sports Illustrated. The school's Brockton Boxers have been a longtime powerhouse in high school football. In fact, the BHS football program has been regarded as one of the most storied, successful, and dominant high school football programs of all time. The BHS boys soccer team recently won their first state championship in 2017, leading them to be ranked 7th on USA Today's list of top high school soccer teams across the country. These are just some of the many reasons why Brockton is the city of champions.
You wanna be hard each and every day, never miss a beat. Not I made you go. Regret the day you ever stepped to me, better respect the queen. Oh no, let's be back up in this again. Thought you was coming, but you been hiding behind all them friends. Wanna play with me? Wanna play for free? Wanna pass, then get played for free? I'ma pass cause they already know that I'm good when I say I be.
Gloria Shea, Sugar the Play will premiere for 2 shows on September 17th at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. inside the beautiful Front Stage Multiplex located at 3492 Mayfield Road in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. For more information, please follow Sugar the Play on Facebook. Sugar the Play is a Cash Team production.
Cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass weight. I don't need that shit cause I got my own now.
Fighting critters in the front yard ever feel like you're in the front lines? You buy tons of name brand canned killers that swear up and down they'll take out the problem first spray. Well, our intel says otherwise. Forget all that. Call us, Old Colony Pest Control. Tell them that Red Revere sent you. We handle commercial and residential pest control needs. Take care of anything from ants, roaches, ticks, mosquitoes, rats, and more. No wildlife or termites at this time. Call us at 774-400-5993, and we'll bring in the big guns.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm your neighbor from just down the street. I also ride a motorcycle, so please check twice. Save a life. Motorcycles are everywhere.
For more information on sharing the road, visit mass.gov/RMV.
Another lesson from my neighborhood. Do you know how to tell if mom is overdosing on drugs? If your mom shoots dope every day like mine, you can only help her if you know the signs of an overdose.
An overdose?
Yes, an overdose. Don't call the ambulance if you're in doubt unless she shakes.
Hi, I'm Zachariah Stupka from American Hustle. You're listening to Hoobazoo Radio on Hoobazoo.com.
It's caught in the crossfire.
In 1973, the United States Supreme Court issued its decision in Roe v. Wade. The effect of the court's ruling was immediate and far-reaching, expanding the right to privacy under the 14th Amendment and altering the legal landscape on the issue of abortion across the country. Norma McCorvey, a single pregnant woman in Texas, sought an abortion. At the time, Texas law prohibited abortions unless performed or obtained to save the life of the mother. To protect her privacy, McCorvey filed suit in federal court under the name Jane Roe. The defendant was Henry Wade, the district attorney in the Texas county where McCorvey sought the abortion. Roe argued that the abortion ban was unconstitutional and asked the court to issue an order that would stop Texas from enforcing the law. The district court found the Texas restriction on abortion unconstitutional on the grounds that the statute was too vague and overly broad and impinged on the rights reserved to people under the Ninth Amendment. However, the court didn't issue an injunction to bar Texas from enforcing its ban, so Roe's options in Texas really didn't change. Arguing that the district court's lack of injunctive relief was insufficient, Roe appealed directly to the Supreme Court.
Sit down.
No, it doesn't.
Alrighty. It's your boy Sinister One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are listening and watching the booth. Make sure to click that subscribe button. I actually decided to bypass today's intro of the show because I've got a lot of things that I want to get off my chest and talk about today. And it's just weird how things work out. It's First Tuesdays. But before I get into this, I got to thank my guest 2 weeks ago, Josh McDaniels of Doubleback Winery from Drew Bledsoe's Wine Company, for coming on. Also my special guest, Crystal Tyson. As you guys see, my First Tuesday guests are on with me right now. Ken Diesel, R Squared. May is Your Mind Matters month. And this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And if you guys were watching the show before we went live, there was a music video by Joyner Lucas called I'm Sorry, which deals with a very, very open look at suicide and mental health. My sponsors for the show, Michael Douglas Barreto, MDB Electronics, Viana Marie, find her music streaming everywhere. Tactical Target Systems is where you can get those zombie targets that you see me with at the range. Also, our last t-shirt winner is Felicia, but I do have a winner from last week. I just have to get that shirt out to him. Chris is the winner from last week. And Old Colony Pest Control, Carl Bonnell, veteran-owned residential and commercial, 774-400-5993. And we're going to get right into the news booth. And the only story that I'm going to mention today that's outside of what we are going to talk about is Naomi Judd. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, rest in peace, 76 years old, is because we are in May, National Mental Health Awareness. And the sad news has now come out that Naomi Judd, 76 years old, a country music legend, took her own life after suffering from mental health problems. Wyona and the other daughters, they released a statement. Ashley Judd, the actress, they released a statement about their mother, who said that she was battling severe mental illness, and she succumbed to her mental illness over the weekend. They were set to receive a country music award, and our prayers go out to that family. Kevin Jeffries, I see you in the chat. Viana Marie, I see you in the chat. Before this show began, you guys saw a little breakdown, a little origin from Quimby about the Roe versus Wade, which was put into place in 1973. Now, I was just a kid then, but I remember how big it was. I remember people protesting down on Beacon Street at the clinics in downtown Boston. We had terrorist acts. We've had people shoot up abortion clinics. We've had people bombing abortion clinics. I've got some questions here to relate to these guys. Now, you guys know my two guys are on the first of the month, Ken Diesel, R Squared. I already know their credentials, but when we have a solid show such as this, where we're, a lot of people on social media, a lot of people are talking back and forth on social media, but a lot of people don't have the credibility or the credits to talk about the legal aspect. So I'm going to let my guys introduce themselves, and tonight I'm going to take the time to let them speak about, how long they've been in law and the experience that they have. I do this when we have a special show, and if you're a new listener, I want you to know that these are guys, they know what they're talking about. So I'm going to start with Ken Diesel, upper left. Let them know who you are, your credentials, and how long you've been in this game.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. One. Quick background. I'm a licensed attorney who's been practicing civil litigation, among others, and criminal defense for 20 years. I graduated law school in 1992. I hold a master's of law in LLM. Both Rob and I actually went to the same law school. He was my mentor in law school, my legal research advisor. And I've been practicing in the field of civil litigation. And matter of fact, I have been representing clients in Massachusetts who have sought abortions when they were in fact minors. In Massachusetts, you are not allowed to get an abortion. If you are a minor, you must get parental consent. However, in cases of abuse and other things, you may seek permission from the court to give the court authorization to allow the minor to have an abortion. Basically, the court comes in, steps in, comes in loco parenti in place of parent. And there are attorneys both who get paid by the state and who volunteer. I'm a volunteer through a number of organizations who represent clients at no charge to do that. I haven't done a lot of those cases. They're far and few between, thank God, because most parents, at least here in Massachusetts, if their child needs to get an abortion, is very supportive of it. But I will say it's a very traumatic experience when a 16-year-old has to go in front of a juvenile judge and ask for permission. It's not a fun experience. That's my background really quick.
Squared, I'm going to let you get into this.
All right. My background's not all that different from Ken's. Actually, it's quite different. But I studied political science in my undergrad, where I specialized in American government and comparative government, which fueled my interest, of course, in the law. And I graduated law school in 1991. I spent most of my legal career on active duty in the U.S. Army as a judge advocate, as you always kindly note on the show. And a lot of that was doing criminal law, criminal trials, which would be, I suppose, among my main expertise. I've also spent time doing constitutional law and some other areas to include ethics, professional responsibility, and investigations and things of that nature. For the last several years, I've been teaching criminal justice and related issues down here where I live. And so I come to the show with an understanding of the background of these issues and wanting to share what the law says and help people understand what government actions and policies mean.
And we're gonna get into this because this story came out last night. It was my son Terrell Hayes and Tyreek. We have a group chat, me and my sons, and we talk about certain things. And my son hit me up and says, "Hey, did you see the news?" And I was actually getting ready to head to bed. He says, "Did you see the news about Roe versus Wade?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Oh, it's about to be overturned." I'm like, "You serious?" And and I went and I looked it up and I got the information. I was like, "Whoa, this is going to be big when people wake up in the morning." Because it was late. When this came out, it was late last night. A lot of people woke up this morning and guess what? The storm, the S storm came to be from this morning till 5 o'clock today, and it hasn't ended. And I just want to say one thing, and I'm going to start off. I'm going to go back and forth with my questions with these guys because I'm going to get into the first question. This whole thing started because Politico put the story out there, and now there's an investigation wondering as to who leaked this draft, which was drawn up in February, to Politico, who unleashed this whole storm. Samuel Alito is the guy who wrote the draft opinion. Now, for those who don't know, the Supreme Court has not overturned Roe versus Wade yet, even though there's going to be a lot of people out there who don't pay attention to anything and don't read or don't listen. They're going to think that it's been overturned, and they're out there. You see them in the streets already. You see them on Facebook already. You see them all talking about it, but it has not been overturned yet. So my first question is going to go to Ken Diesel, who spent a lot of time in politics, and I want you to explain to people what the draft opinion from the Supreme Court is. This is not something really etched in stone because they still have to vote. All of this uproar and everything could be all for naught if the Supreme Court decides that they're going to vote and keep Roe and Wade in place. So I want you to explain what a draft opinion is, Ken.
Okay, very simply, as you may or may not know, there are 9 justices in the Supreme Court. When they take a vote, usually depending on which side you are, the senior justice or the chief justice, depending on what side you're on, either gets to write the opinion or assign it to someone else. When they do that, they write the opinion, they send drafts to the other 8 justices for their comments. And this goes on for a period of time. They will comment saying, I want this, I don't want that, I don't want this. There may be times where a justice may vote with the majority and file what we call a concurring opinion, meaning there's the opinion of the court or the opinion of the majority, and the justice agrees with the finding but disagrees for the reason, they will file a concurring opinion. If the judges disagree with the decision, they file what they call a dissent. And then what happens is the dissent side, if it wasn't the chief justice, the senior member gets to write it or assign it to someone else, and they circulate a draft among that. So what you have is a number of draft opinions deciding what they're going to finally say. Is it possible that they'll change their minds? Yes, of course it's possible. Nothing is set in stone until the actual opinion is issued. I will say this, in my entire legal career, and Rob can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember ever a draft opinion coming out before a final decision was filed by the court. This is the first time I've ever heard it in my legal career. These opinions are usually kept under literally lock and key and no one talks. This is frankly shocking to me. Shows you how earth-shattering this is. They're actually going out to give an opinion. Although Chief Justice Roberts did say that the opinion that Politico had was, in fact, a legitimate draft of the court, and it looks like it's going to be the majority. But you're right. Until the Supreme Court actually publishes the opinion of the court, which is either a unanimous opinion, which is very, very, very rare, or the opinion of the majority, in this case, 5 votes, because there are 9 justices, nothing has been changed, and we don't know exactly what the decision is going to say. And I'll get into that in a second when we talk about Planned Parenthood versus Casey versus Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of distinctions we need to draw. But you are correct, Sister One, this is just a draft, and that's exactly what it is. If I may bring it into a football equivalent, this is basically the Supreme Court version of a mock draft. Everybody can, say what they want, but until the actual draft occurs, that's just everyone's opinion.
Squid, anything to add to your what is a draft opinion?
Very quickly, I think Ken did a great job of laying it out. And what I would add to that is simply, it appears from the discussion and from what's been part of the leaked opinion that there are at least 5 justices on the court that are going to take this side of the case, meaning they're going to side with the state that is trying to have the court allow it to continue its regulation, its ban of abortion, which is what have the case goes up there, and 3 justices, possibly 4, that are going to take the side of maintaining Roe versus Wade or maintaining abortion rights against the states that have recently passed the abortion laws that have banned abortions after 15 weeks and no exceptions for rape or incest. Those are the issues before the court. And so that aspect of it seems fairly straightforward. And I don't expect that to change, whether it could be 5, it could be 6, it could be whatever. But as Ken pointed out, there could be concurrences. And what Justice Alito's draft is one version of what that majority opinion could say. His opinion could also become a concurring opinion, where that's not the reflection of the majority of those 5 or even 6. And so it may be that the state still wins, but not for the reasons or not with the language of Justice Alito's draft. And so that's why I think people have to be very careful to not read too much into this. This is his opinion. And we know that there are a couple of other justices, specifically Clarence Thomas, that agrees with him. But the question might be that there might be 3 or more justices on that side of the issue that would rather give different language, different reasoning, different rationale, different characterization of Roe versus Wade or abortion or the right to privacy in the way that they announce the opinion. And so this may or may not be the opinion of the Supreme Court. We do have pretty firm belief that this will be the side that wins the case, but that does not mean exactly what's going to happen. So people need to be patient until approximately sometime in June when they release this. This is the normal way that the Supreme Court operates. They, in cases like this, they circulate opinions among the 9 justices for about 4 to 5 months. That's what's common. And so this started circulating in February. That's only been a few months. And June is right on target for them to announce the decision. And at that point, and only at that point, will we see. The issue of the leak is, as Ken asked me to confirm, yes, this is the only time I have ever heard of any type of leak like this. It is a big deal. The Chief Justice has ordered an investigation, and we will find out. If there is someone associated with the Supreme Court that intentionally leaked it, then there needs to be follow-on action, accountability of some kind, whatever the Chief Justice decides, and go from there. I don't want to make assumptions. I do want to point out one thing, if this is the right opportunity to say that. I was watching coverage off and on today, while in between other things I was doing, in between working, of course. And one of the correspondents that I was listening to was Pete Williams. I don't know if people know Pete Williams from NBC News. Pete Williams was a member of the Reagan administration for most of Reagan's 8 years. And at the end of Reagan's time, he left the administration, got a job with NBC News, where he was doing the Pentagon coverage, and then became the legal correspondent, where he covers the Supreme Court. He's been doing it for a number of years. I find him very well informed, very credible. He's not very political or partisan. He's pretty much trying to explain process, and he gets advanced copies of the opinions and tries to share with the viewers what the opinions say and what they don't say, because of all the hysteria that circles around some of these big opinions. I listened to Pete Williams earlier today, and somebody asked him, I forgot who the host of the show was. I don't remember what show I was watching, but they asked him, who does he think would leak this? Who would benefit from leaking? And it was very interesting to listen to him speak, because he laid out, and this is all speculation, of course, he has no knowledge that it was a leak or who did it. But he was saying, hypothetically, would it be to the advantage of Justice Alito or Justice Thomas or somebody like that to have leaked it? Would it be to the advantage of one of the dissenting justices, someone on the other side of the issue, to have leaked it? And at the end of some very interesting conversation, there really wasn't an advantage to either side in doing this. Not a clear advantage where you could say, aha, this is why somebody might have done it, even though it's the wrong thing to do. It is the wrong thing to do. But so at the end of the day, we may or may not be surprised if in fact there was a leak. This could have been a hacking, not by Politico. I'm not making that assumption. I'm not a conspiracy theorist here. Somebody may have given it to Politico as a source that they read online, and perhaps, and Politico did some due diligence before they released it to verify that it did come from the Supreme Court. So somebody leaked it. And I think there needs to be accountability for that. We can't have this type of precedent. It's a big deal. It's wrong, no matter who did it and no matter for what reason they did it. But I can't right now, I don't see who it would have helped to do it. So it's interesting, just interesting to see where this goes.
And the question kind of is how much more did they have? It's funny because we talk about whose was released. Now, if you've been watching The Booth and you've been hearing us talk about SCOTUS, Squid, this next question was for you. You've mentioned Samuel Alito on this show several times about his background and some of his, his things that, he's kept it out of court, but his beliefs. And I'm going to let you talk about, because you've mentioned him on this show several times, about who he is. Kind of just a quick breakdown.
Well, it's interesting. First, to respond to what you just said, it's interesting. You said, what else might they have had, whoever did the leaking? And because remember, there may be 9 opinions floating around. Just because we've been able to see Justice Alito's draft, there may be 9 drafts floating around, one by each of the justices, because they would have all taken a shot at this to see where the votes line up and who supports what arguments and where it all comes down, like I said earlier. So there may very well be 9. Did the person who leaked have access to all 9 and chose simply to release Alito's because there was something about the language in there? There was some pretty incendiary language about the Roe versus Wade opinion in there that is a little bit unprecedented by the court. And that may be, I think, what you're asking me to comment on in a moment, which I will. But other than that, why wouldn't they leak other? I mean, if you have access to this draft, you would have access to all of them, assuming you're an employee of the court and the justices. And the clerks, each justice has several clerks. They're very well vetted. They have, professional standards. This would end their career. I suppose a justice could do it. They might be impeached for doing something like that. It would be very, very interesting, to see. But anyway, getting back to your question then, Justice Alito was appointed by George W. Bush, and he was, I think, arguably Bush's most extreme appointee. Every president who gets multiple appointees has a range. Like, you have President Reagan, whose first appointee was Sandra Day O'Connor, who I think, regardless of what side of legal issues you're on, everybody respected Sandra Day O'Connor. She was an excellent justice. Even if you didn't agree with her on everything, I think she was very well respected. He also appointed as the second justice, Antonin Scalia. And Scalia, everybody respected him as a brilliant person, a brilliant legal mind, very well written, well spoken, no slouch. You would have to be extremely well prepared to even have a casual conversation with that man. But a lot of people found his opinions controversial. It's interesting. There are actually opinions that he wrote that Ken and I would be on opposite sides of, for those of you who pay attention to the booth. When involving the criminal justice system. His opinions were not all political in nature. In fact, the Supreme Court, the vast majority of its opinions have no political undertones. Abortion is a fraction of a percentage of the cases that they deal with. And we shouldn't judge the justices just on that one issue. And that's why I think the confirmation hearings are such a darn joke, because they're so focused on whether Roe versus Wade is precedent and whether they would promise to not overturn it or to overturn it based on which side you're appeasing. It's absolutely ridiculous, because there are so many more cases that the court's going to hear. And that's where I want the justices to do a good job, in 99% of their cases. But anyway, so Alito had a very interesting confirmation. If you were a court watcher, which I was because of going to school and what have you, I always watched the confirmation hearings. They've been a disaster for decades. It's not a recent problem, although it's getting worse, or has gotten worse. Alito said some interesting things in his confirmation. And then, after being confirmed, some of his opinions, he has been among the more acerbic authors. And what I mean by that is he writes in his opinions not just his legal conclusions, but he uses some more extreme language. He's highly critical, to include of his colleagues or to include of other judicial colleagues when they're reviewing the work of other courts. I suppose when you say you want people to be direct, he doesn't mince words. I would credit people for being that way, but I think to some extent he goes out of his way to almost add partisanship into his opinions. And I don't think he needs to do that, because you could agree or disagree with him. He certainly did not lack the qualifications to go to the court. The question was, would he be confirmed after a discussion of his beliefs and his ideology, his philosophy, his approach to the court and to the role of the Supreme Court. And so, it was not the easiest confirmation, but he got through. And I think what you have seen in his opinions, and sometimes he's in the majority, sometimes he's in the minority, and I read both his opinions on both sides, because sometimes I quote him on the dissenting side as legal wisdom that I think is worthy of consideration and study. When I teach these cases to my classes, the first thing I always tell the students is, listen, I will never advocate one side of any of these issues, but I will painstakingly go through the analysis so that you understand what the justices of the court have said in these opinions and what it means. And then you can form your own conclusions and take your own positions, and you can argue them as much as you want to, but we're not going to shy away from that. And so there are times when I have been praiseworthy of justices who I've disagreed with because they've written an excellent opinion. There are times I have criticized justices that I did agree with because I didn't think the opinion was very well written or could have been done in a much better fashion. And so it's really very interesting to watch that. If you're a court watcher, and I know Ken is as well, you get a sense, if you read the opinions, not just these sensational opinions that come out once every 4 or 5 years where, so many people in the country get excited for a few days. I'm talking about if you're a court watcher and you watch all of their opinions or most of their opinions that come down, the things that never make the news, but that influence the day-to-day practice of law in the United States. And when you read those cases, you get a sense of who the justices are. And there are certainly a lot of cases that have been issued over the years, justices who are no longer serving, who have since died. Justices from the 1970s, 1980s, even the 1950s or 60s, their opinions are still very valid. And if you study the court and you take constitutional law classes, which go into detail in Supreme Court cases, you get a sense of all these different justices. And you see their name on an opinion, and you could say, it's going to sound like this. It's going to have this type of philosophy and what have you. So that's the way to look at the Supreme Court. And I think that's a healthy way to look at the Supreme Court, and not to keep trying to have, to ascribe the court in playing politics. I think that's a mistake. They do sometimes. Some justices do on certain issues and deserve criticism when they do that. But I prefer to look at the court in its proper role, in its constitutional role in Article 3 of the Constitution and the authorities and responsibilities that it has. I will criticize all 9 justices when they deserve it based on how they write or how they speak. And I will praise all 9 when I believe that they have issued a good opinion. Sorry, that was a little longer than I expected.
No, that's perfect. This is why we're here tonight. And I look, I scrapped an entire show tonight because I feel that this is important to talk about. And there was a lot of questions that popped up. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you're a know-it-all." I'm not a know-it-all. I only talk about stuff that I know. If I don't know, I'm going to sit here and listen to these guys and learn, and then I'll be able to talk about this if someone asks me that question. So these are the questions that I'm posing to you guys, and I'm glad that you guys are able to answer and give us some answers. And for those who don't understand, because there's a lot of people running with this whole thing like this is going to happen, and it's not. Again, this was an opinion. This was an opinion of one of the Supreme Court justices, and at this time it is not etched in stone, but there are people who have worries, and that's going to be one of the questions coming up. Ken, do you have anything you want to add about Samuel Alito? Any opinions?
Just very briefly, I agree with everything Rob said, but it's very important to understand, as Rob pointed out, there are probably 9 opinions out there. We do not know if Alito was tasked with writing the majority opinion, or whether he's writing one of the what we call the concurring opinions. That's going to be very important, because it's just not enough to say, okay, we're overturning Roe v. Wade. What exactly does this mean? And I think we need to go into exactly what Roe v. Wade said. And I also think we need to go into what Planned Parenthood versus Casey said, which is a very important case.
Well, that's
almost no one ever
my next question
about.
For you. This is
so
my next question.
It's very important, and also, as Rob says, it takes about 4 to 5 months. That's true, before an opinion comes down. And if you listen to any of the Supreme Court justices, they say that the whole process of writing the opinion oftentimes changes the way the outcome will happen. Not necessarily the vote, but how it's going to be enforced, what is going to be said. So them taking a snapshot at this basically rough draft is really, I think, a lot of people being, I wouldn't say unduly concerned. I would say they're premature, because once this decision comes down, lawyers like myself and Rob are going to go look into what exactly does this mean. I'm going to get that into a second, how this is going to come down, and what does it mean for states versus federal versus cross state lines and other issues. Because one of the important things in Texas law that almost no one talks about is Texas not only banned abortion in Texas, but also made it a criminal offense for you to leave Texas and go to another state to have an abortion. Now, the problem with that is, and I don't know if you want me to get now the full faith and credit.
Well, didn't they put Texas also put like a snitch like bounty,
right, a snitch rule
also into place? Yeah,
right.
if you snitch on someone that goes out of state, you collect a stipend, which is crazy.
Right, but that's not really that they can do, I think, under certain doctrines. But the question is, can Texas make it illegal for you to leave the state to perform a legal procedure in another state? Now, most constitutional scholars, and I think Rob would agree with me. I'm sorry.
No.
Did I
go
jump
ahead,
ahead?
real quick, because I think this is going to get into the question I have to ask.
But say no. If you have an absolute right under the U.S. Constitution to travel from state to state without an unduly restriction, unless you are subject to some type of judicial restraint, i.e., parole, probation, or something else like that. The state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts can't prevent me from going down to, I don't know. I'm trying to find a place, things that aren't, well, give an example. A couple of years ago, Colorado made it legal for the recreational use of marijuana. At the time, Massachusetts did not.
Right.
Now, could Massachusetts say, we are not going to allow you to go to Colorado for the purposes of buying and consuming marijuana products within the state of Colorado? I'm going to be very careful about this. I'm not talking about going out in Colorado and bringing a product back into Massachusetts. I'm simply saying going to Colorado and having a pot brownie, for lack of a better term. Now, no such law existed in Massachusetts, and now we can use recreational marijuana. But the question is, most people would say, no, you can't. One state can't enforce its laws on another state. The other problem is, what about the full faith and credit argument? States are required to give full faith and credit to each other's laws. So here you got one of the problems you have is, if Massachusetts says it's okay to commit an abortion, but Texas says not, how do you balance that? And that's going to be an interesting thing in the decision. That's why when you have some of these devices, you have a problem. But we'll say that for later in the conversation.
So getting into my question for you, Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said that the seismic, if this happens, this will be huge. This will be a slap in the face to women across America. This will be one of the most historic overturns in the history of legal court. Now, here in Massachusetts today at City Hall, the ACLU was joined by several members of Boston government. Rachel Rollins was there. Mayor Wu was there. They were all there. And everybody was, they're all talking the doom and gloom of what is going to happen. Now, the ACLU and Rachel Rollins spoke eye-openingly, because we all know the ACLU was here in Massachusetts fighting for reproductive rights since the 70s. Ken, you've been very close and involved with the ACLU because at that time, we did have abortion clinics in downtown Boston that were being attacked. We had 24-hour cops outside of clinics that people didn't know were clinics, because remember, people were so scared to go, they were hiding their places, and then they had a whole network. If people don't remember, there was a whole religious network of people who claimed they're religious, and they actually hid the bomber. Remember, we had the Atlanta bombings down in Atlanta during the Olympics, and they actually hid this guy. This guy was on the run, and he was going to all these religious people's houses, and they were hiding him out, and they was feeding him, and things of that sort. So the ACLU has been one of the things, they do a lot of stuff, but when it comes to abortion, they have been on top of what they call as reproductive rights, and my question is going to have Ken explain that. But one of the things that they talked about that was very scary, they said that here in Massachusetts already there had been a jump in abortions from people from Texas and people from New Hampshire, because those states had outlawed it, and Massachusetts is one of the most lenient and most protective for those who get abortions. So can you talk about how Massachusetts became this hub of places where people do come to get abortions because of this whole thing with the ACLU and things of that matter? You've been involved with this. This has been a long time here in Massachusetts.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I think if you're looking for a reason, no such reason exists. If you're looking for multiple reasons, I think the first thing we need to look at is the physical infrastructure. We have more hospitals, more importantly, more teaching hospitals in Massachusetts than anywhere else in New England. We also are one of the leaders in OBGYN care, and abortions fall under that. We also have a record number of family planning clinics and prenatal and postnatal care. We are basically outside of New York City, which I think has had more hospitals than we do. We just, it's a natural coalition of having the facilities here. Not only that, we had a number of people who are very active in both prenatal care and reproductive rights. And I think it's very important to understand abortion is one aspect of prenatal care and postnatal care and reproductive rights. The Massachusetts area hospitals were one of the first to look at female health independent of male health. There are different issues. Men and women have different needs when it comes to their health. Massachusetts was one of the first, believe it or not, this may sound shocking, it sounds almost that I'm trying to break this down on a kindergarten level, but there was a time where people didn't think there's any difference between male and female health. Now that sounds ridiculous today, but there was a time. Massachusetts, New York, and California led the country in saying, no, females have different health concerns than men do. So that's a natural progression. Not only that, we have a large college and academia presence in Boston, which led the way for establishing this. We also have the infrastructure to house, feed, and transport people. We joke about the traffic on I-93 in the tunnel, but we have in Boston a fairly comprehensive mass transit system. And it also goes into as far north as southern New Hampshire and as far south as Providence, Rhode Island. So if you're a person in New England, it's fairly easy to use mass transportation to get to Boston, as opposed to maybe, believe it or not, going to Concord. Let's say if you live in Londonderry, New Hampshire, it is easier to get to Boston from Londonderry, New Hampshire, which is about 45 minutes away from here, than going from Londonderry to Concord, because there is no mass transportation between Londonderry and Concord, which is about a half-hour car ride away. But there is no buses between those two cities. There are buses and trains that you can get to fairly easy from that to Boston. So I think that's the other reason was there was mass transportation that got you to Boston, both rail and bus. And in some points, there was a time that it no longer exists, but you get the ferries there were, believe it or not, ferries from New Hampshire to Boston. They don't exist anymore, but they exist in the early 70s.
They were saying that there have been some people that the ACLU has helped come from some of these states already and has provided them with funding to transport from Texas. There was a gentleman on speaking. He represents the ACLU today, an older gentleman. I thought he said the budget right now is $500,000 to assist people from these states. Can you get into that?
That's a very important.
How does that work, though? How do you qualify for those benefits to transport here out of a state that it's illegal?
Well, depending on the organization you're talking about, most, if not all of these, are private organizations that are using their own money to transport and house people from states that do not allow abortions to states that do allow abortions. And most of them have a criteria, mainly financial, but not necessarily, that says, okay, you can't afford to go it, we'll transport you. Or you can afford to pay some and we'll pick up the rest of that tab. As a matter of fact, there's a Jewish organization whose name I'm going to massacre and Rob's going to yell at me. It basically translates, it's Daughters of Hadassah. I don't know the Hebrew name, but basically Daughters of Hadassah has been doing this for years, not just for abortions. They will help you if you are a Jewish woman and you are in need of medical procedures that are not available in your community. They will hook you up with a Hadassah house in another city and put you up if you are financially unable to do so. I know I've donated money to that organization in my mother's name, but that's going on for years. Not just for abortions. That's for any health procedure. I don't know who said this. Maybe Rob knows, but someone went on MSNBC recently and said that this decision will have no effect on rich Republican women because their daughters, mistresses, and wives will always have money to go get an abortion. This will have only effect on poor women, and that's true. But if I may, my sister, and I know I don't mean to jump in here, but something I've been dying to say.
Yeah,
I disagree with Majority Leader Schumer. This is not going to be this is not going to be the earth-shattering event, simply because Roe v. Wade, for all practical purposes, was overturned over 30 years ago. And there was a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And what Planned Parenthood versus Casey did was it rewrote Roe. So if I may just give a quick background to Roe, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, because some people might have missed the video before we started.
Okay. What Roe v. Wade said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, that abortions could not be the outright ban of abortion was overturned. There was the first time that it says women have an absolute right, constitutional right to abortion. And what the court ruled was we called a trimester system, meaning the breaking the three parts. Between the time of impregnation up to 3 months is what we call the first trimester. And the states were absolutely forbidden from doing any regulations regarding that. The second trimester, 3 to 6 months, the states were allowed to put limited restrictions only concerning health and safety. During the last trimester, 6 to 9 months, they could be more aggressive, including outright bans on abortion. Okay. Now, that was between 1973 and 1992. In 1992, in the case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. They also said that any abortion regulation would be subject to what the court calls strict scrutiny. This is the death knell for any type of review. In order for you to survive strict scrutiny, this law has to have an overwhelming importance to survive. So there's a presumption that if we are going to review this under strict scrutiny, there's no way the statute can survive. Only one case that I'm aware of, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, has ever survived strict scrutiny. And unfortunately, that was the famous Japanese internment case, where we interned Japanese citizens. That was the only case as far as strict scrutiny that I'm aware of. Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, there are other cases. That's the death knell. When Planned Parenthood Casey came along, they scrapped the trimester system. What they said is a very vague thing that says the states could restrict abortion, including banning it, once the fetus was viable. The problem with that is the court never defined what fetal viability was. Huge disaster. Basically, so that's where you get the heartbeat rule and the 15-week rule coming from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The other way they overturned Roe v. Wade was instead of applying strict scrutiny, they changed the burden to undue influence, meaning as the statute would survive unless the plaintiff could prove there was an undue burden on the person seeking an abortion. Now, to give you an example, try to explain the difference in those two things. Strict scrutiny is in New England let me go back. If we're using a football terminology, strict scrutiny is the New England Patriots. That level of play, the New England Patriots, is strict scrutiny. Undue influence is the Brockton High School boxers. Okay, so you can see it's a lot easier for statute to survive at that level. I argue that Roe v. Wade was gone in 1992, except no one realized it, because since then we've had literally an unfettered state regulations that have restricted, for all intents and purposes, abortion. For example, prior to legislation in Texas had a law that required all abortions be performed in a hospital. That in most abortions in Texas were performed outpatient in small clinics. Now, this may not seem like a big deal to people in Massachusetts, where we literally can't swing a dead cat without hitting a hospital. Right. But I don't know if any of you guys been to Texas. I know, Rob, you were stationed in Texas, weren't you?
Yep.
Okay. Back me up on this. There are large swaths of Texas where there's literally nothing out there, and a hospital could be 10 or 12 hours away. Matter of fact, one of my friend's sons became a physician assistant and got his medical school, got the school paid for if he agreed to go in a rural area in Texas for 2 years, where he was the only medical professional for 100 miles.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's insane.
I want you to go any place in I'm willing to put money on this, that you can't go any place in Massachusetts without finding a medical professional within 100 miles of where you are. Anyone willing to take me up on that? So when Texas passed this law, which on the book says, well, that doesn't sound so bad. This is a medical procedure. You should have a professional. You should have a hospital. And I think it was like 75% of Texas that were not served by a local hospital. And a local hospital is determined by any hospital within 25 miles where you are sitting. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't clinics There are a lot of them. There doesn't mean there aren't medical professionals. There are a lot of them. We're talking about doctors, nurse practitioners, or NPs, and physician assistants that are running clinics, but those aren't hospitals. And that's what I mean. And I've gone on for almost 20 minutes. I do apologize.
We've got some people in the chat with questions. Actually, Steve Rita, Jackie Brown, Dave Haggerty, Paul Forrest. What's going on? I love you guys in the chat. Diana Conway is in the chat. Steve Rita says, ask about the AB 2223 bill in California. Supposedly, it's killing babies 28 days after birth. I'm not sure if you guys are up on that bill in California that he's talking about. If so, we can speak on that if it comes to mind. R Squared, are you familiar with that bill that this person's mentioning, the AB 2223 bill in California?
No, I don't necessarily track California state laws unless it becomes an issue for something that we're talking about or otherwise. In the description that you read in the chat, it said something about terminating a pregnancy 28 days after birth.
Yeah, I'm thinking
there's no
before.
I'm
thinking.
Okay. I'm familiar with this a little bit. First of all, let's decide what we're talking about. No, you are not terminating pregnancy 28 days after birth, because you can't terminate a pregnancy 28 days after birth. Okay. What this statute is talking about, again, I saw the same footnote when I saw it on one of my news feeds, is this deals with a narrow exception when you have a child that is born with severe birth defects and who is clinically brain dead. This happens very, very seldom. But there are basically children who are born brain dead. Most of these children don't survive the birthing process. Most of these children die as a result of miscarriage, but there's a small minority who actually are physically alive, meaning their heart, and they define this as their hearts are pumping, but are in essence brain dead. Now, under current California law, you have to wait for them to die naturally. Okay. This bill would say that after 20, if you are born 28, if you are born brain dead, here's the key thing: you have to be at the time of birth, you have to be already brain dead. And you continue to be brain dead for 28 days. And you need 3 neurologists to testify that you are allowed to use, in limited circumstances, euthanasia. The amount of times this happens is so small. Because what happened was, I was reading the article about this, was there was a number of babies. I think there was like 3 in the last decade. This is how rare this is. We're talking the entire state of California.
Yeah, I just pulled it up.
3 babies
keep going.
Were born, and the problem is, once they're alive, the hospital has to keep maintaining them alive, and this could be millions and millions of dollars when they're brain dead. They're never going to come. They're never going to grow. They're just eventually going to die.
Yeah, which is not abortion. This is not abortion.
Right.
It's
not abortion.
Right. So
something completely different.
Steve Rita says it's different. Well, there's different aspects to the law. I just pulled this AB 2223 bill up, the California Assembly bill. It was brought up in the 2021-2022 session. The existing law requires a county coroner to hold inquests to inquire into and determine the circumstances, manner, cause of violent, sudden, unusual deaths, including deaths related to following known or suspected self-induced or criminal abortions. Existing law requires coroner to register a fetal death after 20 weeks of gestation. Now, there are certain cases where things can happen to babies after 20 weeks of gestation. One of the things you were allowed, if you knew that your child was going to be born with some type of genetic deformity, you were allowed to terminate the pregnancy.
Right.
So this bill would delete the requirements. So what they're doing is they're putting the coroner on alert as to holding them accountable. Can you explain one of the things that is in this?
That
law?
was the big thing everyone was talking about.
There's several different instances where people will be screwed. If if it took away a pregnant person's right to choose if they've been raped. It is a whole thing. So if anybody wants to look it up, it's the AB 2223 California Assembly Bill. It's the existing law is the Tom Bain Civil Rights Act. And again, this is dealing with civil and criminal liabilities. We are at 752. And it's exactly kind of what Ken talked about. And there is more to that bill.
It's a modernization. The problem is they're trying to modernize when the coroner has to get involved and do what called a coroner's inquest or inquiry. And the simple reason is it's just trying to save money. It's just very expensive to do these things. It's resource management.
Now, Rob, who's been in the military, do we see a lot of court cases in dealing with abortions in the military? Or no, pretty much no.
Not really. It's rare.
Not really. Very rare.
It's not a big issue.
We are at 752. So I got two questions for you guys. Again, obviously at the beginning of this show, the first thing I said was that this was a draft opinion. But as these guys have discussed tonight, there are very good reasons as to why we are seeing so many people upset and worried about this if it is overturned. I think one of the things that people are worried about is the ripple effect. So I'm going to let these guys real quick talk about if this does, what do you guys think the ripple effect will be? I'm going to start with R Squared first.
Yeah, no, happy to answer that. I thought Ken was going to start singing Charlie on the MTA for a minute there, when talking about all the trains and subways and what have you. And I was ready to get my beer out. But I think what's interesting about this is if the Supreme Court does what people are speculating from this opinion, if something along these lines, overturning Roe, overturning Casey, is what the outcome of this case is, the Supreme Court is not outlawing abortion. They don't have that power, nor would they seek to do that. This would simply be changing abortion from an action protected under the right of privacy under the Bill of Rights to something that's not protected by privacy under the Bill of Rights, or it is protected, but under the court scrutiny, they have determined that these restrictions are reasonable under the circumstances. And so worst case scenario, what the Supreme Court does by overturning these cases is you would have every state and the federal government having to enact whatever legislation they wanted to enact that would govern, when and if and how abortion would be available in that jurisdiction. And so there are already over 30 states that have abortion bans on the books. Either they have laws that remained on the books that were pre-Roe versus Wade that would now come back into effect because they're on the books, or that they have recently passed laws waiting for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe and Casey, and therefore their laws would now remain effective, like Texas and Mississippi and Florida and a bunch of others. And so that's what would likely happen, is that you'd now have a state-by-state decision, and every state legislature and governor is going to have to come to a decision on, first of all, whether to do a ban and whether to have exceptions for rape and incest to protect the life of the mother if you have a severely deformed baby, whether there'd be a time frame. There are so many different issues that you could possibly see, a huge combination of different provisions in different states. If the court is not supposed to make decisions based on public opinion. They're supposed to be making decisions based on what the law says, but elected officials do make decisions based on public opinion. And so it's not what the majority of people in the United States would think. It's what the majority of people in each district would think. And so you're going to have members of Congress, you're going to have senators, you're going to have state representatives at different levels, all now having to pay more attention to what the majority opinion is in their jurisdictions, and to see whether there is a majority opinion in the legislature that could amount to some kind of a ban or not. Best case scenario, that's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is the Supreme Court does allow for these restrictions because they have weakened the protections for abortion, but without overturning Casey. And by simply saying that, one of the big challenges, I think Ken alluded to this, one of the huge challenges in Roe versus Wade was the fact that it was based on the medical evidence available in the 1960s and early 1970s, I suppose. And Justice Blackmun did a great job, if you like what he did, in collating a whole bunch of medical evidence to come up with what is the level of viability of a baby at the different trimester level, which is how we got to that Roe versus Wade decision. And in the 1960s and early 70s, a baby in the first trimester, there were no signs of life and no viability. And so it was easy for the court to say that the government had no interest, no ability to regulate abortion in the first trimester, whereas in the third trimester, you had signs of life, you had signs of viability, and that there was an interest in the government in being able to regulate to some extent abortion rights. And then Casey made it an undue burden instead of, a strict scrutiny approach. And so what's happened with medical evidence in the last decades is overall it's a good thing, obviously, because you now have the ability to determine what would be evidence of life at an earlier stage. Now, everybody can still use their faith, their personal belief system in what actually constitutes life and what would be evidence of life. But medically speaking, you can detect signs of life that read together can reach the conclusion earlier in a pregnancy than you could in the 1960s when they were formulating the Roe case up through the courts. Right. And similar to that, you have viability. It used to be that, you would a baby would almost have to make it through 8 months, to be able to survive prematurely. And now, you can have I don't know what the record is, and I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to trigger anybody, who's gone through some difficult periods, but 4 or 5 months, it's happened where babies can be saved. And so, it's still rare, but it can happen. And so it's the evidence, the medical evidence has changed dramatically in 50 years. And that's what's complicated this, because now you could make the argument that when the state wasn't protecting life, in some cases, as the scale evolves, they are arguably protecting life in some way along the lines, or at least you could make that argument based on which side of the issue you're arguing, whether there's sufficient evidence and signs of life, meaning viability, whether the baby can survive outside of the womb or not. And and so that it's a good thing that technology has allowed doctors to do these things. But it certainly, from a legal standpoint, complicates the issue of abortion rights and where the state has an interest in regulating what is otherwise a personal, private medical decision between a wife and her family and her doctor and her clergy and what have you. And so that's the challenge right now. And so if the court is simply going to recognize that, then that calls into question some level of the protections, especially the more advanced a pregnancy gets. And so that's where some of the states have come in with this 15-month thing, where they're saying that there are signs of life or sufficient signs of life, extensive signs of life, and the potential for viability after 15 months. And so that's why they've gone back there at that level. And there's still dispute over whether that's the right time frame. I'm not conceding that as an issue, but that's what's happened. That's what's made these laws far more viable, even under a Casey analysis. You could almost maintain the Casey rule and allow restrictions at a certain time frame shy of what it used to be.
Wow. But we're at 8 o'clock. We're at the top of the hour. We did this. And let me just get in here real quick. I got to mention all these guys for my beanies. Thank you for supporting my beanies. These are the shows that I broadcast and involved with, co-production, Sinister One Productions. Thanks for everybody for coming out to the Kicking It Old School and Murder the Mic vibes. And there's our t-shirt winner, Felicia. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the show tonight. I'm going to get ready to get out of here. Let these guys say their goodbyes real quick. We're going to close it out with one final question for these guys so we can get out of here. My final question, and let you guys say your goodbyes. Do you think SCOTUS will follow through with all the uproar right now? I'm going to start with Ken first. Do you think they'll follow through? You can say your goodbyes.
I honestly have no idea, and I will fall back on the famous Mark Twain saying people should be very careful about making predictions, especially about the future. There is a reason why this is the first time in history that we're seeing a draft. These drafts are kept under wraps for a reason. And as Rob said, you know, best case, worst case scenario, or something in between, you know, and exactly the science has changed. I know for a fact that my youngest nephew Eli was born at 5.5 months, and he survived and is doing great. So now he was born, you know, 16 years ago. So he was born in 2006. If he had been born the same year I was born or Rob was born, he wouldn't have made 5 minutes.
Right.
There's just no way.
Right.
That
Both my
now
boys were
he's
preemies.
right. So again, exactly. And also, I haven't seen the actual text of the Alito draft. I don't think it's actually been published. The full text, I don't think has been published. It's very important to find out what the details are. So all I can say is, before anyone opens their mouth, please read the goddamn decision and find out if it's a concurring opinion, a dissenting opinion, or the decision of the court. Those are the three questions we don't know, and that's as we used to say back in the day, the $64,000 question. And on that, I'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners, all 12 of you. Everyone out there, be safe, stay informed. We'll see you next month.
Man, yeah, definitely stay informed on this one. Squid, same question, and then we close it out with you, man.
I do believe that I feel it's inevitable that there are 5 votes to, if not outright overturn Roe and Casey, to dramatically change the nature of abortion rights going forward. For reasons that I just explained, because of the medical evidence and the ability for the state to argue successfully that they have a compelling interest in additional regulation. Whether or not it's an outright ban or not is different. Every state will make that decision, but I think the door is open now to the states to increase the amount of regulation and restriction that they want to, and maybe it won't be an all-out ban, but it'll be something. So that's what I'm convinced will come from this decision. Other than that, I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys on this issue. This is obviously one of those divisive issues. People have very, very strong feelings. Most people can't discuss it without getting emotional, without bringing in non-legal issues into it. I hope that certainly we didn't do that tonight. I certainly hope that what we shared was a way for people to understand the legal issues, which is really what the Supreme Court is dealing with. And what I hope that the state legislatures and Congress will deal with would be the legal issues. Obviously, politics is part of the legislative process, not the judicial process. But I hope that this is the way that this issue gets approached, into doing something that balances the nature of our rights under the Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights, which has stood the test of time, and is something that we need to take very seriously, along with the idea that legislators have to serve their communities and do what is in the best interest of the nation. So I hope that the discussions could be similar to this, and not like some of those crazy confirmation hearings we have, and some of the crazy rallies that I'm seeing sometimes on the TV right now. So I really appreciate everybody's attention, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss these things tonight.
Yeah, it was a great show tonight. I want to thank you guys for coming on. And it just seems like, I hate to say it, we're blessed sometimes. The timing of things, this comes down, and tonight you guys are on. It's the first of the month, and you guys are on. We've had our issues with January 6th happened 2 nights after we were on, and we kind of predicted and was worried about what was going to happen, and it happened. So, I want to thank everybody for tuning into the show. Dave Haggerty, thanks for letting me know the Celtics are up by 25. So if you saw my eyes get real big, that's because Dave Haggerty just put in the chat that the Celtics are up by 25, and my eyes lit up. So it was nothing to what Rob was saying. I wasn't giving him the eye slide. It was the fact that
I saw your eyes, but I had no idea you were looking at the basketball game. Wow.
Yeah, no. Somebody put in the chat, because I'm not watching the game right now, but somebody dropped it in our live chat and said the Celtics are up by 25. So I was like, whoa. So, guys, I got to thank everybody for tuning in the show, 806. Everybody for watching the show around the world. Also, Brockton Cable Access, and I'm hearing that we might be getting on Abington Cable Access. I got to thank everybody for tuning into the show, hanging out with us. Triple Threat Tuesdays, Oscar Mike Radio on Thursdays, Gloria, Shea, all you guys hanging out. But tonight, Mattie C Sports for You and Me, Happy Hour with Lito. And SpongeBob, hey, do me a favor, take us home. Oh, wait, before SpongeBob takes us home, June 7th, you saw the promo, people. June 7th, Brockton Cable Access. Live. The Booth. Ken Diesel. R Squared. Live show. Brockton Cable Access. Rob will be here from Florida. We will be doing the show live with a live studio audience. Brockton Cable Access in June. Ken, why do you have a questionable look on your face like we haven't talked about this already?
No, I'm sorry. I was reading something else. I'm sorry.
Ken had a look at his face like, what's he talking about?
Someone had just texted me something in an unrelated case, and it's just like.
So Rob will be up here. June 7th is our next first Tuesday. It will be live at Brockton Cable Access. And hey, guys, thank you for tuning into the show. SpongeBob, do me a favor. Take us home.
Well, see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I make it, bitch, don't repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, and y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip. I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.